Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is generalize. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb generalize used is to mean to draw a general conclusion from specific or particular information. Connected to this definition is the second one, and that's to make general or broad statements by inferring from specific cases. So sometimes as we read, it can be a good skill for us to generalize. Take the examples we are seeing or that we are reading about and make some conclusions from them. But generalizing can also be quite dangerous, right? So let me give you an example. If a student had a bad experience with their first teacher, and that student says, well, that teacher was mean to me, I didn't learn much, I didn't like school, and they come away with it making a generalization that all teachers are bad or school is awful, that could be really dangerous. And we also know that's not true. But these broad statements can sometimes be really harmful. A third way you might hear the verb generalize used is to mean to bring something to general use or general knowledge. This particular meaning, not as dangerous or it doesn't have the potential negatives that the first two might. Generalize is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, I would drop the E and then add ing to form generalizing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding D. We're not adding an ed here because this verb already ends with an E. The base verb, generalize, is making this voiced Z sound. So our past tense ending is just going to make a D sound. Generalized, generalized. You'll be happy to know I don't have any additional meanings with phrasal verbs. That's going to allow us to practice making some sentences in some different verb tenses. Today, we'll look at the imperative, the simple past, and the simple present. Let's start with the imperative. You might know this better as a command. It is a unique way to make a sentence in English because there is no stated subject. The subject is implied and it's you. That could be you singular, talking to one person, or it could be you plural, talking to a much larger group. So, as an example of an affirmative imperative sentence, we would begin with the base verb, generalize the concepts from the text. This might be a command that a teacher gives to his or her students. But again, you're telling them what activity or what action to do. If I want to make a negative imperative, so I'm telling someone not to do something, I would start with don't, and then I would use my base verb. So here is an example of a negative imperative. Don't generalize about millennials or Generation Z. So these are some of the more recent generations in the United States. We kind of segment people who are born around the same time, and we look for characteristics that are similar. And it seems like there can be competition or a lot of critique of generations that are not your own. But this sentence is getting at the sort of the negative aspect. So don't make these broad statements about everyone who, let's say, was born in the 80s or the 1990s. Okay? That could be dangerous. Remember, you can always make an imperative a little more polite by starting the sentence with please, or you could end the sentence with please. So Don't generalize about millennials or Generation Z, please, if that feels more comfortable to you. Now let's take a look at the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that was completed at some definite point in time. Now that definite point in time may be stated in some sentences, so you see words like yesterday, a specific date in the past, or a statement like 5 years ago. But it's not always there, and that's because it could be understood as being part of the conversation. Somebody already referenced the specific point in the past, and that's true in passages as well as you read. If they sort of start as a paragraph by describing what was happening on a particular day, they don't need to continue to say on that date, as they describe those events. So to make an affirmative simple past tense sentence, I'm going to use our past tense form of a verb. This is true no matter what my subject is. Let's look at an example. The candidate generalized claims against his opponent. So here we would think of these broad statements. Okay? And again, we don't have a specific reference to a time period here, but it could have come from an article about a speech that was known to have occurred on a particular date. If I want to make a negative simple past tense sentence, I'm going to use did not and then the base verb. So here, negative simple past tense sentences don't have the ed form of the verb. Let's look at an example sentence. The study's results didn't generalize well to other situations. And if I want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, I would start with did, then I'll have my subject, and then the base verb. Did the article generalize? Did it make broad statements? Now let's take a look at the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about facts, to describe habits and routines as well. The thing to remember about the simple present is that the verb is going to change based on the subject, right? So if our subject is I, you, we, or they, we just use the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, I'm generally going to need to add an S onto the base verb. And there are a couple spelling situations where it might be an ES, but here, with our verb of the day, generalize, we would just add an S if our subject was he, she, or it. Let's take a look at an affirmative example. Surveys generalize results and make conclusions that apply to a whole population. So this is sort of the function of a survey. We might not be able to talk to every single person, but we try and talk to a variety of people and then make broad conclusions from that information. Now, if I had just been talking about a single survey, I would have added an S to my verb to form generalizes. If I want to make a negative simple present sentence, I need to use do not in the base verb, and that will be true with the subjects I, you, we, and they, or I would use does not in the base verb for the subjects he, she, or it. Let's take a look at an example. The law doesn't generalize to all social media apps. So this might be referencing a particular law that was designed to prevent something negative or bad from happening with one particular app, but it is not broadly being applied to all. If I want to ask a yes or no question in the simple present, I'm going to start with do or does, then I'll have my subject, then the base verb. Does that story generalize the experiences of women? Right? Does it say all women have these certain experiences? Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb generalize. The first word we're going to look at is the noun generalization. This is a general statement or concept that has been obtained by inference from very specific cases. So again, this tends to be quite broad or big. Let's take a look at this usage in a sentence. The politician made sweeping generalizations. Another related word is the adjective generalized. This is really common in the medical field. So it's used to describe a medical condition or some sort of medical problem that is affecting someone's whole body or the whole part of their body. So it's not just a small part of their arm, it would be the whole arm. That's what that second part of the definition means. Here's an example of this adjective in a sentence. He has been experiencing generalized muscle weakness. So it's not just the muscle in his arm feels weak, but in both arms and probably his legs, maybe back, maybe other parts as well. The last word we're going to look at is the adjective general, and this word can have a number of different meanings. One usage for this adjective is affecting or concerning all or most people, places, or things. Here is an example of this usage. COVID-19 news has been of general interest. So it concerns most people. It applies to them. A second way to use the adjective general is to mean normal or usual. So an example of that, someone might ask the question, what's the general policy? What's the normal way we handle this situation? Another usage for general is not specialized or not limited. So here is an example of this. The quiz show covers general knowledge. So it's not narrow in its focus. Another way to use the adjective general is to mean chief or principal. An example of that, if you were in a store, had a question, someone might say, well, you need to talk to the general manager. So again, this would be of someone in a higher position. You might also hear the word general used as a noun, and that's to reference a military rank as well. If you read a lot about that or are interested in it, then it might be more common for you. I was running out of space, so I didn't make a note of it, but I was thinking as I was talking today, I should probably tell people, because if you've read history or studied history, that might be another place that you have encountered that word. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.